With inflation eroding household income, especially for the poor, how can monetary and fiscal policy be better aligned to protect real incomes and purchasing power for the poor?
Thank you very much, Shana. You know what I always say is we all live in a country and we have an economy. And for us to find jobs, for us to survive, we need the economy to be healthy in the first place. Monetary and fiscal policy do that. If you have, and I keep saying, yesterday I heard everybody talk about these reforms and how bold they are. What we don't talk about is how timely they were. Because the reality is, a year ago, we were on the verge of becoming Venezuela under Chavez, or Zimbabwe under Mugabe, or Uganda under Idi Amin. We're on the verge of hyperinflation. So when we talk about erosion of purchasing power of the poor at 20%, imagine if we had gone to 80% inflation, 100% inflation, as we saw recently in Argentina. Okay, so that's the first thing to appreciate. Okay, that things are bad, but they would have been much, much worse if we did not carry out these reforms. The second thing is, we need to humanize numbers. And I think one of the best ways for policymakers in the fiscal space or monetary space to make sure that they minimize the adverse impact of macro policies on households and individuals is to humanize numbers. When I was in the central bank, I say to myself, when I look at inflation going up, I'm not just looking at a 100, 200 basis point number. I'm looking at the hundreds of thousands of people who could afford 3 square meals a day and who no longer can afford 3 square meals a day. And many people don't realize that fighting inflation, what is orthodox economics, actually is one of the best approaches for managing the poor and managing their condition. And if you don't think of the human beings behind those numbers, you tend to take them for granted. When a few years ago we talked about inflation at 30%, I was shocked that Nigerians would see inflation figures of 30, 32%, and nobody was saying anything. At 36% inflation, the price of everything doubles in 2 years. At 18%, it doubles every 4 years. And that's how we started with rice at 7,000 and it got to 60,000. So getting inflation under control and managing the fiscal space, especially the fiscal deficit, are critical for safeguarding balance sheets of the poor. And let me just say one thing while I have the stage. Yesterday, I heard a few things that disturbed me a bit. And one of the things I didn't like was this restraint that we need to have interest rates come down. I think it would be a very dangerous thing at this time for this summit to send a signal that we should lose in money. Okay, we're praising the central bank for stable exchange rates, praising the central bank for building up reserves, praising the central bank for the stability and bringing inflation down. The only way the central bank achieved this was tightening money and raising interest rates. We cannot eat our cake and have it. If you lower interest rates now and losing money, you start going back to where we were. Frankly, to be very transparent, even when the MPC recently reduced NPR by 0.25%, I called members and said, as far as I'm concerned, it's premature. We do not need to send that signal now. So let us encourage the central bank to hold the line. Stability is a fundamental sine qua non. Without it, we can't have growth. Without it, we can't have development. Now we're having 3% growth in the first quarter, 4% growth in the second quarter. For the first time in years, this economy is growing faster than the population, which is a good one. Okay, and people should not forget that this is the first time in 8 years that this economy is growing faster than the population is growing.
Absolutely.
And it's happening at a time when all prices are moderated. So it's fantastic. But it is not the time to blink. It's not the time to walk back.
Thank you for that insight. I know that sometimes it is between the chicken And if you have a long-term vision to build a shock resilient social protection space, it's very important. While on the long term, looking at the fiscal and monetary structures and the reforms and policy, but also building an immediate palliative relief so that the purchasing power of the poor are not totally eroded. Dr. Lawal, as those